the only show that's 3 dimensions away from Twisters being called Twister, because it's just a basic reboot. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Twisters, released in 2024. Twisters is directed by Lee Isaac and is written by Mark L. Smith from a story by Joseph Krasinski, and the movie stars Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, Anthony Ramirez, Brendan Perry, Maria Tierney, Sasha Lane, and of course David Cornswet. The movie is essentially a sequel, but kind of a reboot at the same time to the original Twister movie that came out in the 90s. The movie is essentially a movie about Twister, and basically what happens is Daisy Edgar Jones' character basically experiences a tragedy in the movie, and then of course she quits Twister hunting, and then of course Anthony Ramirez's character gets her back in the game because they're trying like, oh, we could stop Twisters for good or warn people and save them, and it kind of becomes that type of movie. And then of course Glenn Powell is this country folk who basically is like, oh, if you feel it, chase it, doing it for clicks and views. Like imagine Logan Paul chasing Twisters. That's essentially the characterization of this guy. I honestly think this movie is pretty good. I really enjoy watching this movie. Like, I literally went into this movie, and I'm just going to specify, I had no intentions of watching Twister because I just did not like the first one. Yes, I'm the one of those people who did not like the movie. I just walked in and was like, it's nothing special, just people hunting tornadoes. Like, especially someone who lives in the South, so I'm used to tornadoes, and so that doesn't like, I mean, I didn't grow up in like, Kentucky or like, or Kansas. Like that's Tornado Alley essentially. I just like, but I literally would just like, so I kind of am familiar with this thing, and so whenever I was sitting there watching this movie, I was like, I just don't give a crap. And so my little nephew wanted to see it, so I took him to see it. And I ended up enjoying this movie more than he did because I'm like, watch this going, oh, this is interesting. Like the first 10 minutes it starts, someone dies, and you're just like, oh my God, this is what I wanted the whole time. Like this is actually a compelling story. And Glenn Powell has that charming guy where he plays it, where it's like, you start off like kind of like, oh, he's the asshole of the movie and everything. And then of course he becomes this great hero character, and you realize he's not the villain because you think, okay, Anthony Ramirez's character is the villain of the movie, is like the hero of the movie, and then he's kind of like the villain, when in reality he's kind of reversed, and he's like, oh, he's doing all this stuff, getting all this money so he can help the people in this town, versus Anthony Ramirez, who's basically him and David Cornswet, who ironically is the new Superman as well, who plays the villain in this movie. He's the new Superman, so it's kind of ironic, I thought, where I'm watching this movie and I'm sitting here and like David Cornswet is basically kind of like Carrie Ellis's character in the original, only this one he's basically just goes around. They like, oh, we're gonna capture the Twister so we can report it, on it. And then of course once the Twister hits, they go and they start writing checks to people because they're apparently buying up land, giving it like for corporation purposes, I believe. And I watched that and I was like, I don't like that aspect of this movie. Like that to me, I felt like kind of like I was like, all right. I was like, okay, so basically, like, I mean, maybe I'm confused here, but I thought maybe like, so they're buying up land, but also they're trying to capture the twist. Like they're trying to literally record the Twister, or like record it where they can like report on it better, where basically they could track it like, oh, the Twisters come from miles away, but like if the Twister's happening right now, wouldn't it make, I mean, things like that just kind of made me like, I that's the things I did not like about this movie, where I was sitting there watching this, and there's a couple things that kind of had me like, oh, really? Like one thing was like, there are some stuff that you have to turn your brain off of. Like for instance, there's a scene where Glenn Powell, who is great in this movie, he is fantastic in this movie. But there's a scene in the movie where he chases drives the tornado into a Twister, shoots fireworks in there, and he comes out unscathed. And I'm like, that is bullshit, because his truck would be gone and he would be dead. Like also there's a scene where he digs an auger into the ground. Like he has these little augers that he digs into the ground of where the truck, and then the Twister comes through, and I'm like, did they realize though that the thing is like a vacuum? It would suck the doors off the hinges and it would smash the windows. I'm like, do they not realize that it's not like, I don't think they understand that that's not how that would work. Like, but I mean, again, it's a turn your brain off movie. It's a fun little summer movie. I mean, I'm sure the original one wasn't as accurate either. The movie, I do think that, and there is some great stuff in the movie. like there is some stuff that I thought well recaptured the movie well. Essentially, how I like how like the chemistry between him and Daisy Edgar Jones, where she's the protagonist of this movie, just like Helen Hunt was the protagonist of the original, and Bill Paxton was a supporting role. Glenn Powell's a supporting role in the movie. In fact, he doesn't come in until I think 10, 15, 20 minutes into the movie. He don't come in. And I really like him in this movie. And I think Anthony Ramirez plays kind of like he's like the buddy that is kind of like, in a way, the protagonist of the movie, where David Cornsweet's the protagonist, but like he literally is more of like working for the antagonist, because they're basically going around just writing people checks, trying to buy their land from them in grieving times in a kind of scummy way, like corporations, because they're like, oh, we're gonna build land here for our companies are gonna build land here, and we're just like letting. I'm like, why would you want these lands if the tornado tears them down every freaking year? I mean, like, seriously, that makes no sense logically. California would make more sense, but here is Tornado Alley. You're gonna lose your company every year. It's like, well, I mean, I wouldn't even put up expensive stuff here. I mean, I thought that was kind of like, what? And also, like, they're literally trying to use the machines that captures missiles, okay, that like stops missiles, to spot tornadoes. Okay, but then like if you see the tornado, then how are you going to spot it then? Wouldn't it make sense if, hey, you could just spot, oh, we're using it, it's coming close. Instead, it's just like, okay, we're going to capture the tornado data so we can report the data, I guess. I was like, well, then why do you even need the never, I was like, never mind. I mean, turn your brain off. It's a turn your brain off thing. Also, I think she's sidekick in the movie because she literally can like tell when the direction. I mean, like apparently, like she is really good at reading the weather because she can tell when the storm's about to happen. So like, I was like, okay, she's not psychic, but like she basically can predict weather. Let's just say that. Almost kind of like Amanda Seyfried in Mean Girls, kind of like that in a way, but not like grabbing her boobs though. Like she just follows the wind, the direction of the wind or whatever, and she's like really Einstein when it comes to the weather. Like she's a great like meteor. She works for the Weather Channel, I believe, even in this movie, and I really like that aspect. Like where like she's chasing the thing, her friends die, she chases the weather, and then basically like like all this stuff happens like there is a scene in the movie though at the end, especially where she's driving into the storm, and you're like, oh, you think she's gonna die, but like, and there's also scenes where like they were just huddling into a car, and the car, like her and Anthony Ramos, like are driving backwards, and I'm like, why don't you turn the car around? Why don't you turn the car around? And instead, they turn the car into a ditch, and then this passes them, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I was like, okay. I do like there are a lot of things I do like in this movie. Like I do like the chemistry between her and Glen Powell, and I also like the rodeo scene where like it hits the rodeo, and then like they're huddled down into like the like the swimming pool. I thought that was really cool, and I also like the movie theater scene where they're in the side of a movie theater, and all of a sudden like you just see people flying out of the seats, like it's just so cool, and the people running into the theater, and I started laughing going, I wonder what would happen. That'd be really cool if they had like extras running into a theater. See, that would just scare the shit out of me, because like imagine they're running like, Twister, I mean, that was so cool. There's a lot of great sequences in that and everything. And also they apparently stopped the Twister in this movie as well. Like, yeah, they literally stopped the Twister in this movie, and I'm just like, that heavy, like, okay, that would never happen. But again, twisters are not as long, like not long. I think they're like under 30 minutes. So really, I mean, a twister is fast, and even though it's destructive, I do like there's a lot of things in this movie I do like though. I thought the chemistry was great, and I thought there was some really funny jokes in this movie, especially coming from like the Glen Powell's team, because he has like a really rednecky team, and like they do like they're really fun to like listen to, and I'm like, I would like just the whole movie about them. That's how great they are in this movie. And I do also like how they're trying like to literally like get there first and everything, and like David Cornsweet's team is like they're tech people. They're trying to like, oh, we got to get there first, cut them off and everything. And it just like it's a really fun rivalry between the two. And I also like how like like there's like okay, like whenever they're like recording the stuff and everything, it is like there's a British guy who's there, and he's just like, I'm gonna throw up. He says, you didn't tell me, you should tell me to buckle up. And it's just like, it's just, there's a lot of fun in this movie. Although there is some negatives, of course I said the negatives. I think the positives outweigh more than negatives. I think this movie's well directed, and it has a great cast and is well acted. My issue is only with the story itself. I think with if Joseph Krasinski and Mark L. Smith's script would have been much more like tighter, and like would have made took some of the fantasy out of it, made it more realistic. I understand. I'm glad that it wasn't just trying to preach to you about climate change and all that. I'm glad it was just trying to turn your brain off experience. And I think that was fun. This movie needed that. It didn't need, like, just like Top Gun Maverick was. We didn't need like a war with the Russians or nothing. They just made him like an unknown named villain. And I like how in this movie we don't have like, oh, climate change has caused us, so we need to save the environment and recycle. Not it's not like that. It's actually just more like, hey, look, this happens, and like maybe we can stop it, but not by climate recycling. It's more like we have a weapon that can stop it. And I think that's a fun little experience, and I highly recommend this movie if you haven't seen this movie. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid A-. Thank you so much.
Is that it? Nope.